Bienvenidos a Sinapsis, el podcast de los especialistas de Sonepsyn, la Sociedad de Neurología, Psiquiatría y Neurocirugía de Chile.
Hello, I'm María Ignacia Carrasco. I'm a psychiatrist from Chile, a fellow in bipolar disorders, and today I'm going to interview Yulin Hswen, right? She's a computational epidemiologist and associate professor at UCSF, and the youngest ever associate editor at JAMA for its Artificial Intelligence in Medicine section. Her work bridges social media, AI, and public brain health. And we're going to talk about how AI is changing neuroscience for specialists and anyone interested in neuroscience and the mind, the machines, and the future of care. So, Yulin?
Yes,
is it? Yeah?
Perfect.
Okay, so I've been reading quite a lot about you on the recent days to prepare for this interview, and I noticed that your career path is quite unusual. Like, you had an early interest in acting and also in computational epidemiology and then editing at JAMA. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, how did all these threads come together? How did you end up doing what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, it is an interesting path, but I think like my talk will say, I think we're very multimodal and multifaceted beings. So I think we have a lot of components to our persona. Acting has nothing to do with anything. It's just a passion. I loved it at the time, but it's very unique, very different, very public facing. But in terms of the research area and how I got interested in it is, I think it really stems from personal experience. So in my time in graduate school at Harvard, I got actually quite ill, and I ended up going to see a physician, and I had a very terrible experience.
Oh.
They were very dismissive of what I was going through. I felt like I was gaslit. I felt they weren't listening. And what I ended up doing is I ended up turning to the internet for advice.
Yeah,
like most people, right? Like
do.
most people end up doing that. And I realized I wasn't alone. So I ended up, researching and being an advocate for my own health. Mm. And so that really got me into this idea of how the internet had a lot of information and a lot of people were going online to understand their health. But that you could also, from a research perspective, be able to collect that information and be able to better understand what people were going through in terms of their real experiences, but also, if you actually aggregated that, be able to actually understand kind of population health. And so that really kind of led me on to this kind of digital internet epidemiology path. And the computational part really comes from the fact that, I was trained in traditional epidemiology, but that those methods alone couldn't fully grasp all of the data that was coming online. And so you needed that computational computer science methods to really be able to aggregate it and to be able to really take that unstructured type of data and make it structured. So that's really how I kind of came to this path.
But that's so interesting how, your defining moment was a very personal, unique experience. And it all went from there to what you are now. So as an associate editor for JAMA, you interview and curate a lot of frontier work. Mm-hmm. So what's one of the most surprising or eye-opening things that you've come across recently?
It's interesting. We get a lot of articles, and a lot of them are extremely fascinating because, JAMA, we're quite critical, and we choose a very few articles, obviously. I think what's really fascinating right now is the type of, what AI can do in terms of the image analysis. So one of the studies that I really loved out of JAMA that really surprised me was one out of Ripart in JAMA Neurology. I think it was published probably in February 2025. And it was taking a look at MRI data, and it was looking at focal cortical dysplasia and trying to be able to identify kind of brain lesions that the human eye really can't necessarily always detect. And what it used was this really interesting kind of AI method, which was this graph neural network. And what it did was it was really able to identify kind of areas, actually 64% of areas that, radiologists couldn't identify. They identified as areas that were, FCT related, that, traditional methods couldn't necessarily pick up.
Yep.
And that's because of, these kind of new AI methods that was able to kind of, instead of looking at pixel to pixel, it was really actually kind of connecting the brain regions and being able to really see these kind of refined and really specific areas that, the human eye can't always catch. So I think that's something really interesting that we're seeing in JAMA, but we're also seeing just overall is the ability for these, AI tools to be able to see and analyze, millions, if not billions of images, especially, that really take a lot of refinement that the human eye and people can't always catch. So I found that interesting.
So we are entering an era where machines are detecting things before the human eye. Mm-hmm. And this is something that many specialists are very afraid. Like, are we going to get replaced by machines? Like, do you think that's what is going to happen?
No. Well, I am worried about a couple of things. I think that humans are always going to be needed. I am not going to discount that. I think that, how about this? A really amazing human clinician is always going to be better than the best machine, by far. But I think that where it starts to become a little bit in the gray area is when people start to, and this is people, not just, physicians, where they potentially become dependent on AI.
Yeah.
And they just start relying on it to make decisions, and what I call, cognitive complacency, where they're just letting the AI decide, but they're not actually using their, human knowledge or human intuition.
Or developing new skills.
Exactly, to be able to identify, what is correct and what is not. And AI is not always right.
Yeah.
And it needs to be cross-checked with humans. And I think that we would have such little humility to not think that the billions of years that we have, evolved in this world, that we have this amazing type of mental capacity to be able to pick out these kind of minute details and to be able to kind of filter things out. So like I said, I do think that humans are incredible, and that, the best physician and the one that is so detail oriented is always going to be better. But I do worry that over time, we, again, might be complacent to the fact that AI is just always there for us.
So as a person who works in AI, you're very conscious of that. So I was wondering, how do you do it yourself not to lose your own skills by relying on AI at current times,
Yeah, I think, so I'm trained as a researcher first and foremost. So my biggest thing is citations and references, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they also, I also, I love auctions. I'm like a big lover of auctions, and provenance is the other thing that is really big, right? So where is it from? And you want to see the original source. So I think for me, it's always important for anything that you do, even if when it comes across news and information, or even what the AI is spouting out, you need to track down the original reference. Where did it come from? And then, if you're able to access it, which is always an issue, but still, you have to read that study and see, because even the original study isn't always, it's got flaws as well. So you have to understand that, but you have to make sure that the reference is quality and that you have to double check it.
You're double checking, and you're also asking the right questions, right?
Yes.
You're always asking, if they're right or not. So, sorry. So you've studied how online narratives, true or false, spread almost like a virus and affect public health. So what does that tell us about the power and danger of digital content, you think?
Yeah, I think I think we're always thinking that we're separated from the real world and from the online world, right? We call it offline and online world. But in reality, the online world has become our reality.
Yes.
Right? Like we spend in general, on average globally, it's about 7 hours a day.
Yeah, that's
right?
huge.
That's huge, right? That's probably more than most people sleep, in all honesty. I mean,
Yeah.
I sleep actually quite well and quite long, and I try to do that as much as I can. But in general, we have an identity online, right? And our interactions, our social interactions, and what we do and what we feel online is real. And so it means that we're also influenced online as well. And if we're spending more time online than we do offline, it means that that environment actually becomes more important in terms of how we feel and how we behave, again, both online and in the real world. And so I think that is a realization that I don't think people, I think maybe people on social media and the public know, but I think research, we're always second guessing this kind of online environment and not understanding how the behaviors and the actions that we do online and the feelings we have online is actually quite more truthful and reflective than what we say and what we do offline. It's the whole concept of social desirability bias, right? I mean, if you ask someone, hey, do you like me? Do you think I'm attractive? I don't know how many people are going to tell you the actual truth, in all honesty, right? But what's shocking is when you do the research that I do is how truthful people are online, to the point of it's actually quite horrific, but it is the truth. And so we need to be able to use that data to better understand, like you said, society, but also how that information actually does spread. And how it is kind of like a virus because of the fact that online, in terms of your networks, if I talk to you, if I gossip to you about something, or even I tell you information about something, I tell you and you tell maybe a couple of other people. When I speak about it online, that could be to thousands to millions of people at the same time because everyone's getting that information online. So when I say it's like a virus, I'm saying that it is truly faster than probably any sort of kind of behavior or idea that gets spread on the offline avenue.
And it's not that it only affects people, like individuals, but it's also shaping the way they're handling public health policies. And in your country, for example, you have there are a lot of changes that you can observe after the infodemic. For example, vaccines, that sort of thing. What's your?
I mean, absolutely. I think that I do think it's very much happens in the U.S., but I think it happens everywhere. I think we're so shaped, right? Our decisions are so shaped by what's happening online. And I think that we're so much more attuned to the effect of, in general, what people are thinking and what people are feeling that is monitored by online networks that, governments, policy, but I'm talking about also when it comes to even companies, like the industry itself, make decisions based on what the public is thinking because, we have, in general, the public, we have a very short attention span. So whatever we're thinking or feeling in that moment changes our decision, right? It's the equivalent of, in the market itself, if there's, if all of a sudden there's a really hot item that's online, that's really popular, right? They're going to market it in a certain way and people are going to purchase it.
Yeah.
The same thing happens with politics as well, right?
Politics and ideas.
Exactly, right? Is that people make decisions in the moment. And we always have to remember that whatever you're feeling at that time period is going to be how you make your decision at that moment in time. You never remember, 6 months beforehand, I felt this way. No, you make a decision that's at that certain point. So similar to the point that you're saying about vaccines, if that information is very negative about that topic, people are going to make that decision in that moment. And you can see the trends when you look at the data, how that changes, right?
Do you think public health agencies lost control of the conversation, with the misinformation?
I think that they were, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that they were ever part of the conversation. I'm a public health person, and we are not great at communication.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was trained to be in that realm, and I think we should be, unfortunately.
We should be ahead, right?
We should be ahead.
Yeah.
But we never listen to the public narrative online, right? Because, I understand, people are scientists and they put the information out, but I think you have to understand, again, how people are thinking, how people are feeling, and then be able to be responsive to that. You're not listening to how people are feeling. How can you then be able to relate to them? And I don't think we've ever done that.
I totally agree with you. I think your background in acting, it actually helps. So you can be a very communicator, and
Oh, I don't know if I was that great of an actress. So let's hold back there. I was very commercial, but it could be.
Yeah, you're a good communicator. So your research uses AI to listen signals of potential harm. For instance, monitoring suicidal ideation or that sort of things. So what's the potential in using that for?
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about how when you're not feeling well, right? Like even if you have, again, it could be thoughts of suicidality, or it could be you have a rash, or you could have an itchy throat. What is the first thing that you do? I always ask that question, especially to the audience. And the first thing you do 99% of the time is you go online to search for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, are you going to talk to a friend about it? Maybe, but it could be embarrassing. Also, you have to call the person. They might not even answer. You might text them. They don't answer. To go see a doctor is pretty challenging to get the appointment. So the first thing you do is go online. So
nowadays, ChatGPT.
Nowadays, ChatGPT. I'm not there yet. I haven't done that. Maybe the next generation.
My friends use it all the time.
It's amazing.
They have a rush. They put a photo.
Right.
And, yeah.
Oh, so that is incredible. I still use search engines. I still use Google. But yes, ChatGPT people do a lot of the time. And so that's the first thing people do. And so this idea that, again, back to the point of how, when I wasn't feeling well, you go online. That signal is so much earlier than you would ever get from a public health system where, you make an appointment to go see a doctor. 2 weeks later, months later, the labs come in. And so this idea of being able to collect that online information instantaneously allows you to get those earlier signals than you ever would before. And then again, as I said before, is that this kind of both organic, but this authenticity and truthfulness that you have with the internet is incredible, that you might unfortunately not even get those signals of suicidality or mental health illness that you would ever get going to see a physician, because you might not even say that to them.
So to what extent can platforms like X or TikTok serve as early warning system for population mental health?
I think they'd be incredible. I think they're I think the data is there, absolutely.
100% is there.
I'm telling you when I say that, there's obviously X in social media, but I don't work for Reddit. I don't absolutely, but Reddit is incredible. It's my favorite platform ever. But if you ever go onto it, because it's anonymous, you get so much information online, and then obviously search queries and kind of any search platform.
People are very sincere, but
people are sincere.
What are the ethical implications of monitoring in social media or on the internet with AI?
I get that question a lot, and my first thing is that you sign all your rights away when you are on these social media platforms and on these search platforms. I think that they have enough information, truthfully, to make all the difference in the world, and you have given all your information to. From a research perspective and from a public health perspective, we aggregate all the data, right? So no one is identifiable. We can't identify the individual. And the other part of it is we go through institutional review board. We go through so much ethics that the data is so protected.
Yeah.
But I, again, come back to the fact that these companies have your information online, and people are always about the research aspect, but you're giving all these information already quite freely to these companies. And I think that they have the information. I think that truthfully, my truthful answer is it's just not profitable to be able to, research into that area of suicidality, but they sure use it for selling you, anything
I
they
get your
possibly
point.
want. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, you will get an ad for some,
a personalized
ad
about the thing you wanted to buy this morning.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
there's the whole case. I don't know if you ever heard about the case where, it was so invasive that the parents of a girl who was pregnant, and she didn't even know she was pregnant, got sent a pamphlet to their home because of the information that she was searching online.
Oh my God.
I
No,
know.
didn't know that.
And so, like,
Yeah.
they have the information to know exactly about your health before you even do. So they have all of that there, and they're more than willing to give you that information to sell you product. But when it comes to, these diseases, they don't.
This is a discussion which should be happening as a society, and to develop a system where you can take care of people after this information that is online.
Absolutely, you know, and I mean,
are there any projects like?
It's interesting because I think I think that there have been a lot of projects that are out there, but it's, again, I think it's a sensitive topic, but it's also not a profitable topic.
Not profitable,
right?
yeah.
And I think
But
profit
then again,
is a big driver.
Like health is you spend a lot of money on public health, right?
Yes.
Each government. So,
Yes.
Yeah, you could.
We do,
save
but what's going to be more profitable, right? Is selling you a drug or going to be preventing you from doing something
harm.
bad?
Yeah.
Drugs are much more profitable. So I think that in that vein, I think they will be more likely to sell you a drug than they will be preventing a harm.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about bias and AI. This is always a key concern in investigation and research. So have you noticed any sexist or discriminatory patterns in AI or related? Yeah.
Well, let's open up that can of worms of sexism and racism.
And discrimination, yeah.
And discrimination. No, I think that I always say the saying of that garbage in, garbage out. So your AI algorithm is only going to be as good as the data that you put in. Right? And so if, I think, again, historically, medicine has most frequently researched, for instance, like males,
particularly very biased.
Right, very biased, right? Researched white males. Like the classic example is in, again, neuroscience is all on male rats.
Yes.
And so most of the studies have been on the population of male rats, and the drugs that have been tested on them are only effective for that particular population. And historically, the reason why they excluded female rats was because they got pregnant and died quicker.
Yes.
Right? And so, again, if we start to develop, again, drugs or AI algorithms on that, they're only going to be looking at that population. And the side effects are going to be completely ignored. That's just one example of side effects that are going to be completely ignored from, 50% of the population, right? And so, again, the bias that you see a lot of is you see a lot of women, again, similar to my case, where they've been dismissed for their pain.
Yes.
Right? Or side effects. And they look to studies saying, well, this drug didn't cause those side effects, but have you looked at the study? It's all males. We have different hormones. And so when you look at that, that's probably one of the biggest biases. The other biases is racial biases, right? Like you see in skin cancer a lot of the time, where a lot of the AI tools and just historically even medical textbooks and medical students have been trained on looking at light-skinned persons for skin cancer. And so when you input all of those images, like we were talking about images in the beginning, the AI does not recognize what cancer looks like on darker skinned individuals, right? And so that bias then leads to, misdiagnosis or underdiagnosis, and leads to ultimately more deaths.
Yeah. So if we have not enough data or the system is trained by that data, then it's not going to be perfect. So can AI help us design better studies, better research? So we shorten the gap of our knowledge.
I don't know if I think that humans, we still really, I think that AI can't be creative. And I think that we still need to push the boundaries of innovation, and we still need to develop those questions. I think that what AI can do potentially is, I do think that it can enhance maybe the rigorousness of, the study design and be able to compile, different methods. For instance, similar to the work that I do, traditional epidemiology, you're only trained in that area. And then, if AI can kind of draw from other disciplines like biology or computer science, it can potentially enhance that. But I think that still, like, the fundamental problem is humans, right? And I think that we need to actively not be biased. We have to actively try to shrink disparities, because in general, I think we're prone to always kind of generalizing everything when we really have to understand that not everything works for every population. And I think
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think AI tends to do that as well. It tends to generalize. And I think we need to be very specific and very active at making sure we're precise
Maybe
for
have
populations.
our own AI in different regions, like to train it in different places with different data.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's not just that, but every person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that you do not use the same hair products as I do.
Exactly.
I'm sure that you don't use the same skincare products as I do, right? Or even have the same size clothing. So why would we have the same medical treatments? It just doesn't make sense, right? It
Yeah.
just doesn't logically make sense.
You propose an ethics checklist for responsible AI in public health. So what are the key questions every team working with AI should ask themselves before using it? Yeah.
I mean, it sounds simple, but it's not. But like, is this bias? Like, and I think how you kind of help that is, when you look at teams, do you have representation on your teams alone? Like, I am so shocked at how an entire team will just be of males alone.
Yes.
Right? And so I think you need to ask yourself that question. I think it's difficult to be able to see biases when you cannot see something that you've never experienced. It's very hard. I think that's one of the things. I think the other one is that, looking at your data set again, right? Like, you have a training, you have a testing data set, and if they're both from the same population, it just doesn't work, right? And that's challenging, but, is your algorithm only good on one type of data?
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter, right? It's, again, like, I mean, I'm kind of, setting myself up for a sexist argument, but like, if I'm using a skin cream, I'm like, okay, well, is this shade of makeup going to work on everyone?
Everyone.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Like, actually ask that question, or does it mold to it, or do you need multiple ones? Like, ask yourself that question. I know that people know that it's not going to apply to every situation, so just think about that. I feel like, again, my AI checklist goes through more things than that. Another one is transparency. Like, make your data publicly available. Make your code publicly available. See if
even
it
the
works.
bad results, right?
Even the bad results.
Yeah,
even
that's
the
so
no
important
results,
in research. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is this glory of AI, but so many things, and we see it too. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to publish null results.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of things fail, right?
Yeah. As a JAMA editor, you must read it. Yeah.
Right?
You
see
get
a
access
lot.
to that.
You get access to that. And so you always have to think of the other side of it.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure many young professionals are inspired by this conversation. So I would like to know if you have any advice for young professionals who want to enter this field of research, or what advice can you give them?
Oh my goodness, I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to say be better than AI. Like, and what I mean by that is have some humanity in it. Because all the way when I talk about young professionals is I get emails all the time, and I can tell that it's written by generative AI. And it doesn't help. It does not get you through the door. Honestly, giving that extra touch, like you spoke about just even in the beginning of, will clinicians be replaced by AI? Not if you're human.
Yep.
Not if you take the extra step, read through your email, take the extra step to have those experiences and integrate it into your research. that's going to not make you replaceable. But when I get a blanket email, or even, again, a study at JAMA, I can tell if it's written by AI and it becomes boilerplate. Do not do that, please. Just even take the time to edit it a little bit more, and I'm telling you, it'll make a world of a difference, right?
Yeah. To put your soul into it, right?
Put a little bit of soul into it. It's like a little bit of flair, a little bit of fashion and
of who you
personalization
are.
of who you're into
of who you are and your point of view.
Well, like this interview, if I gave you blanket answers that I got from generative AI, it would be so boring. But I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you need to really bring yourself into everything, because it's the only way you're going to be set apart when everyone else is using AI.
Well, this was a great conversation, not generated by AI. So thank you so much. It was very nice to talk to you. Thank you for your
so
time.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Esto fue Sinapsis, el podcast de los especialistas de Sonepsyn. Encuentra más episodios y contenidos en nuestras redes sociales y en sonepsyn.cl.